Lester pled not guilty at his arraignment.
Well, he should have pled insanity.
Everybody pleads not guilty at their arraignment. Nobody's going to go to court and say, I really need to make sure that they know I'm guilty of this. Hey guys, Jeremy with Civitas Law Group reviewing Suits LA, Episode 2.
No. Okay, funny games aside, Stewart taking half the firm is still the talk of the town. Dylan Pryor is a new client. You are the new head of entertainment.
Ted, I understand what the stakes are, and I know that you're focusing on Lester's murder trial. Whatever Dylan Pryor needs, I'll get it done.
Okay, so attorneys do change areas of law. But here we've got a pretty drastic change, right? We've got an entertainment lawyer just suddenly picking up a murder case defense. So criminal defense from entertainment law. However, this is the only show that I've ever seen that actually gave an explanation of why. And that is that they gave Ted Black, new Harvey here, a background in criminal law. He's a former federal prosecutor from New York, and now he went out to LA, and he's a entertainment lawyer out here now. So he's thinking, yeah, I can just jump right back into this. All of that being said, still probably doesn't happen because you find out that his background in criminal law was so long ago, it's in another state. Laws can vary a lot. You can have local rules or customs that could vary. So still probably not going to happen, but a nice attempt at actually trying to make it real and say, well, here's why an entertainment lawyer could actually suddenly jump in to practice criminal defense.
Had a great time and, go back to the house, did ecstasy.
How many pills?
We each took one. Wasn't working fast enough, but we didn't think it was working at all, so split a third pill.
Okay, so this is an actual pretty real conversation between attorney and client here. They're recording it so that they know what his side of the story is. This is the murder defendant that Ted Black is now representing. And they're having this conversation with him, and he says, yeah, we went back to the house, did ecstasy. There's going to be a lot of times where there are serious crimes that occurred, and part of the backstory is a less relevant and much less intense crime. In this case, he's saying that they did ecstasy, which is, of course, an illegal drug. I've actually had clients that have come to me and said, my defense to having, one in particular I'm thinking of, my defense to having meth in my pocket is that I didn't know I had meth in my pocket. Well, why would you not know you had meth in your pocket? Because this guy stole some stuff from me, and so I broke into his house, and to get back at him, I was just shoving everything that I could into my pockets, and I must have grabbed some of his meth and shoved it into my pocket, but I didn't know that. I thought I was just grabbing money and stuff. So the defense there to felony 4, possession of dangerous drugs, was felony 2, burglary. Not the best defense in the whole world. We didn't go with that. So we went ahead and just asked the prosecutor what could we do about a plea. And as it turned out later on, this particular client actually said, yes, of course, I actually did know I had meth in my pocket. Once I explained that burglary defense may not be the best thing for you.
Right on time. I like that.
You're not old man Hanrahan.
You think they'd send a high-profile case like this to Hanrahan? He's who they send when they don't care what happens. I'm who they send when they do.
I'm who they send when they have no chance, but they need a win anyway.
Lester Thompson needs a win, all right. But this plea deal, it's the closest he's gonna get.
That's right.
So we love drama. And in this case, we're creating drama by Ted Black not knowing who the prosecutor is and expecting some older guy that they're talking about. And he walks in, and of course, it's this younger big shot attorney, right? And they're making it sound like, yeah, she's the best that there is. I've never once worked a case or gone to the prosecutor's office without knowing who I was there to talk to. Who the prosecutor is actually available on the Maricopa County Superior Court website. If it's a misdemeanor offense, they might not have an assigned prosecutor. They might say those types of cases are handled by this particular prosecutor. But for the most part, you know who you're there to see. So just walking in and saying, oh no, a different prosecutor? No, not gonna happen.
Lester pled not guilty at his arraignment.
Well, he should have pled insanity.
Everybody pleads not guilty at their arraignment. Nobody's gonna go to court and say, I really need to make sure that they know I'm guilty of this. I have had to explain a few times why we're not going to plead guilty today, why we're going to say not guilty at the arraignment, and then later on down the road, change that plea to guilty because we're trying to work out the best plea possible for them. The way to do that is not to walk into the court on the first day and just raise your hand and say, hey, judge, just need to make sure you know I'm guilty. Now, the other problem with that conversation is, at least in Arizona, when we have arraignments, most of the time judges don't even ask, how do you plea? That's for courtroom dramas. That's not for courtroom reality. They will actually say, I'm entering a plea of not guilty on your behalf, and then just tell them when they're supposed to come back or when their future court dates are. Make sure that they're aware of all of those. For the most part, these very dramatic arraignments that we see on television are not real. An arraignment, I actually tell my clients, an arraignment is the biggest waste of time that you're going to go through in this whole process. We're going to go in, they're going to say, I'm entering a plea of not guilty on your behalf. They're going to ask you if you need counsel, unless I'm standing right there with them, in which case they don't need to ask that question. And they're going to ask if you understand the charges. Well, if I have already sent a notice of appearance to the court, that notice of appearance is going to say, the notice of appearance, by the way, is a document that says I represent the client. That's going to say, I represent the client, so they don't need counsel. They're entering a plea of not guilty, and we've discussed the charges. So an arraignment is a total waste of time. But that being said, everybody's going to plead not guilty at those.
To put his life in the hands of a glorified black shirt, no tie talent agent.
You forgot former federal prosecutor. And I never did work at the local level, but unless whatever that is says you're dropping the charges, I'll see you in court.
Okay, but you should know I'm not 3 hours into this thing, and I've got the victim's blood all over your client. Coroner's report inconsistent with suicide, and a line around the block of people begging to testify that Lester Thompson's love language is lying. So you might want to run this bad boy by your client, just in case.
He might want to run that bad boy by his client because he's required to. So as I've said in previous episodes, any offer of settlement is required to be taken to the client. A plea agreement is an offer to settle a criminal case. So plea agreement might be in this situation, okay, he's accused of murder. Could be saying, oh, we'll take it down from murder 1 to murder 2, and you'll do 15 years instead of the maximum. Could be something like that, but he's required to go to his client and say, this is what it is. Now, I've had situations where I knew my clients didn't want them, but I've gone to them anyway and just said, hey, I need to make you aware that this is the current plea offer. One case in particular, my client thought that he had a very good self-defense argument, not as good as he thought it was, but the prosecutor offered 7 years. I knew I could beat that. We got it down to probation later, but I still called him the minute that 7-year offer came in. I called him and said, hey, they're talking about 7 years in prison. And later on, we worked it down to probation only and entered that plea. But yeah, he's going to take that plea agreement to his client regardless of whether he thinks that client wants it or not.
So she says I'm gonna keep bar and I'll wait for you.
FBI! Don't move! Jimmy Patriel, you're under arrest for the murder of Billy Esposito. I got you now, Pellegrini. You're going down.
Okay, so believe it or not, there's some realism there, but not very. So we're in a flashback here, and Ted Black going back to his prosecutor days, and they show the FBI is rushing into this mob bar. A bunch of mobsters, or at least theoretically, are sitting there, and the FBI comes rushing in. But if you take special note, looks like only one FBI guy comes rushing in before the prosecutor. Ted Black's not even carrying a gun. Yeah, he's wearing a bulletproof jacket or vest, but yeah, probably not. Now, here's some realism in the situation. I did actually recently find out that prosecutors will go out to a crime scene to assist with not so much investigation, but collection of evidence to make sure that things like that are actually going well. I actually thought until recently that was just TV. But I did have a prosecutor, we were sitting in judges' chambers in a settlement conference, say, oh man, it's a busy weekend, I'm on call for, and I forget what they call it. But she said, yeah, I'm on call to go out to a crime scene if one actually happens. That blew my mind. So actually they will do that. But are they going to make entry into a mob bar with one FBI guy in the front of the pack and them carrying no fire. I mean, they're not going to carry a firearm into this scene. So no, that's not going to happen. They might show up, 5-10 minutes later after SWAT or whoever has gone in to clear this situation out and make sure that's not dangerous. But going in right off the bat with them, that's never going to happen.
We got 3 witnesses. They all put you there.
I was in the neighborhood. A bomb went off, so I left. End of story.
Say we don't get you on the bomb. We're gonna get you on the bomb. Say that we don't.
Okay, now, only because of the instance that I discussed just a minute ago, with the prosecutor telling me they will actually go out to the scene, I'll say this is a maybe not. Only because of that, but I'll say I'm 99% sure. Probably not. I have never in my career heard of a prosecutor doing the interrogation of the suspect. Never. I'm going to say I'm 99% sure they're never going to do that. This is going to be a police officer who's actually skilled in the art of interrogation. Could a prosecutor actually know how to ask questions to produce a particular response? Yeah, if they want to be good in a courtroom, they need to know that. That's not the same as interrogation. They don't have to play by rules of evidence and things like that here in the interrogation. And the police are really a whole lot more schooled on what they are allowed to do during an interrogation. Now, we have to know all of that because we might have to present a motion to the court to say the police officers violated some of those rules, or this isn't going to happen. A prosecutor in there, and you might also note from this scene, there's no police officer in the room at all. He's sitting there with this mob boss, just having a face-to-face with him. Not going to happen.
You looking to make a change? We could use some bodies around here.
Pass.
Then let me give you what you came here for. I took that sorry plea offer to my client. Pass.
Good, that deal's off the table anyway.
All right, so never in my career has a prosecutor randomly dropped by my office. And to the best of my knowledge, they've never randomly dropped by anybody's office. Comes in here looking all smug, because once again, I've said it 100 times, we love drama and this makes drama. But just looking all smug and they're both, flexing at each other and, I'm the best. Number one, prosecutors and defense attorneys, we usually speak pretty civilly to each other, even on very difficult cases. Number two, all of this scene probably is a phone call or even better yet, an email. Even if a prosecutor really wanted to gloat, they might wait to say something until you're face-to-face in a courtroom. But I've got to tell you, the prosecutors I've worked with, I don't think they've ever tried to gloat, even if they're calling me to say, bad news for your client, we just found something out that's going to change this case entirely for them. They'll pretty much call me up and say, hey, Mr. West, I wanted to let you know this. I'm going to be sending it over, but this is what we've got. I don't think I've ever had a prosecutor just straightforward gloat at me like this. And they've definitely never once just randomly dropped by my office. So there you go. That gets us almost to the end of the episode. That is Suits LA episode 2, and we will see you next time.